All right, Christmas week. DJ's got some time off. I'm PK. Joining us now, CBS Sports college football expert, Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we got a lot to discuss. First, we'll look back at the first rounds of the playoff games. Obviously, Alabama and Oklahoma was a thrilling game for sure, big time. The other games, not as much. Just your overall impression of what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we go back to last year, right, we had 4 non-competitive games, so I think that cutting it down to 2 this year is a pretty good start. But, that Alabama-Oklahoma game was a fascinating one. Obviously, Oklahoma gets out to that huge lead, and Alabama storms all the way back. For me, I was disappointed by Oklahoma in that second half. I thought that they showed a lot of fight in the first half and just ran out of answers a little quicker than I hoped that they would. And for Texas A&M Miami, I mean, obviously a game that was the first ever playoff game to be scoreless at halftime, the lowest scoring playoff game in college football playoff history. Like it was a rock fight for so much of the game, but I think that the team that was better for most of the day won, and that was Miami.
And do you take anything from James Madison scoring a bunch of points in the second half? I know it gives Dan Lanning some talking points to act like, okay, we're not satisfied. That wasn't Oregon standards and all that. But is that any form of concern going forward? Because obviously they play Texas Tech up next.
So I don't think that it gives me a lot of concern. Now, I will say, I mean, obviously everybody's going to point to sort of the points that they scored in the second half. I mean, JMU was moving the ball pretty well in the first half as well. But, especially when I look to the matchups ahead, I think that a huge part of that was Alonzo Barnett is a really dynamic quarterback, somebody who's able to make plays with his legs and keep the chains moving. And when I look ahead to the matchups that Oregon could have, you have Baron Morton at Texas Tech, who's more of a pocket passer and is dealing with some injuries. You have Fernando Mendoza, most likely, and he's not necessarily somebody who moves a lot. Then you have Julian Sayin. So I think that Barnett was a sort of unique challenge from that perspective. And so I don't necessarily expect it to be something that carries over. Now, I think that, look, a lot of programs in college football should consider, like, the importance of having a dual-threat quarterback in this moment. I think it just opens up your playbook and allows you to keep the chains moving in a different kind of way. But Oregon's not going to see that for most likely the rest of the season.
Now, with those 2 group of 5s getting in, both lose as expected, Nick Saban coming out and saying, hey, we don't do this in baseball. We don't make the AAA team go play the Dodgers in a World Series and all that stuff. Of course, these guys aren't necessarily AAA. They're in the same level, same classification, so it might be a little bit different there. But do you think there's any ramifications to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Well, okay. I think that the conversation around this to me has gotten ridiculous. I mean, first of all, the reason that there were 2 a group of 5 teams in this year is because the ACC's champion went 7-5. Like, right. There is no system, no pathway that you're going to create that can account for the fact that the ACC was won by a team that was not very good. Like, that's not something that should happen. That's not something I think is going to happen again. And I think the ACC certainly, I think if anything changes, the biggest thing is that the ACC is going to need to revamp their tiebreaker scenarios to really try to put their best foot forward and produce a champion that is capable of being in the college football playoff. But again, most years it's going to be one team getting in. It's going to be one game. Most likely that game isn't going to be close. But, like, at the same time, I mean, I think one of the things that drives me crazy about this whole conversation is that the sort of most powerful programs have done so much to try to hoard resource, hoard money, keep it away from everybody else. And then they're yelling at those other teams for not having enough resource. Like, the New York Yankees don't prevent other teams from getting money. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys make a lot of money, but, like, they have to share it with the rest of the NFL. And so I don't know. I think that, like, to me, so much of this just misses the point of what college football is. It's a hyper-local sport. There were fans from Virginia who made the trip out to Oregon, and they knew their team was going to lose, and it didn't matter because that opportunity, getting to be on that stage, was worth it. Certainly, I'm sure that folks down in Utah can certainly talk about what it meant to the University of Utah to get those shots whenever they did have a team that was at that level, and same with Boise State, and same with TCU, so on and so on. So, I mean, I think that to me, like, the conversation is so short-sighted about all this stuff and so reactive, and I promise we don't have to have this much reverence for the 7 p.m. TNT TV window.
Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, joining us as he's done Mondays throughout the football season. Going forward, as far as the college football landscape, I think that the games are the games, but off the field, I think the number one story right now is who is going to be Michigan's coach. Dillingham, they announced he was going to stay at Arizona State, and so now it leads you to think, what are they going to do? And the Kyle Whittingham story is fascinating to us because he doesn't say he's retired, and he had press availability on last Thursday, and all of us were up there, and he made a statement. Somebody said, well, what's going to be the process determining if you're going to coach again or not? And then he said, look down, it says the process, and then he went very simple. If the phone rings, I'll answer it, right? And if I like what's being said, I'll stay on the line. That's basically a paraphrase of what he meant. He's 66 years old, which, I don't know that that's that big of a deal, but maybe to some people it is. He just turned 66 less than a month ago. It looks like he's still got his energy. Do you think that he could be a candidate, a serious candidate at Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that two things about this, right? I think that if you are a hiring athletic director, you understand that this is not a coach who is going to be there for 8 years, right? And so, because again, like, Kyle Whittingham is, obviously in incredible shape, incredible health, incredible energy. But also, we've been talking about him retiring for the last 5 years, essentially. And so if you're hiring him as your new coach, you know that it's not a long-term decision necessarily. But if you're Michigan, I think that that's what makes this really interesting, because maybe maybe you hire him to stabilize your program over the next 3 to 4 years. And also, by the way, maybe to win at a high level. He's an incredible coach, of course, who would be working with incredible resource at Michigan. So I think that for me, like, it's a fit that makes a lot of sense. I don't think they're going to get other elite candidates in the mix. We've already seen, like you said, Kenny Dillingham formally close the door on that. Kalen DeBoer formally closed the door on that. Like, I just don't think that there's a whole lot out there that's clearly better than bringing Kyle Whittingham along and letting him kind of rebuild your program. So it's something that makes a lot of sense to me, but also I think that Michigan probably views that as, sort of a backup option. And I don't mean that as a negative, but I mean that in the literal sense of, like, he's not going anywhere, and you know that you have that option available to you if you strike out on 3 or 4 other options that you're going to try. So I'll be interested to see what direction they ultimately go. But, the longer that this drags out, the more the Whittingham thing makes sense to me.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I'm wondering if they just decide, well, you're supposed to get a coach and, like, he's going to be here 10 years. And I think that's
right.
Overrated. When they hired Urban Meyer at Utah 20-some years ago, he only stayed 2 years, but it was 2 phenomenal years. 2 years to that point that they had never experienced, or at least hadn't experienced in most people's lifetime, maybe going back to the early 60s or 50s. He brought him the outright title, and obviously they break the BCS the next season and all that stuff. So it was only – it's less than 24 months if you want to add it up, but wow, what a 24 months. We were working, doing sports radio here at the time. I was a beat writer, I was doing both. I was doing sports radio and was a beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. So, we remember it well. And I was like, all right, would you have hired him if you knew he was going to only be here 2 years? Well, if you knew the results that he was going to give you in 2 years, and then at that point you could pass it along to Kyle Whittingham, Obviously, the overwhelming answer would be yes. But I'm wondering, we don't necessarily know how it's going to be. We're looking at it from perspective rather than into the future. My thought is that I'm wondering if they do like Penn State, a bunch of guys say no, and they still get a decent coach in Campbell from Iowa State. Now, it's a different story. They chose to fire Franklin, who was an accomplished coach. Michigan, their hand was basically forced. So it's not like, well, I can argue, is Matt Campbell really going to be better than James Franklin? Whoever Michigan hires, well, they had to hire somebody because of the situation, so it's a little bit different. But I'm wondering, do you think they just wait it out? Somebody will eventually say yes, who's younger, if they offer it to them, right?
Yeah, no, I think that, again, that's why you go through your process, right? Because you see who's interested, you see what's available to you. And again, like you said, I mean, nobody would have said no to the 2 years of Urban Meyer. And also, by the way, because of what it did for setting up the program long term. Now, I will sort of make the distinction, right, that obviously Urban Meyer left for greener pastures. The thing that you'd be wondering about with Kyle Whittingham or an older coach is, does he just leave to stop coaching, right? And so it doesn't necessarily ensure that something better has happened along the way. Now, that it still might be better, but, you just don't know. But I think that, again, like, if you have somebody if you find a candidate that you feel really good about, who's younger, who you feel like can be the future of your program, like, there's validity to that. Again, I think that Penn State had a really bad process to land on a really good answer in Matt Campbell. I don't think that there is that fallback candidate here at Michigan right now. It's ironic because I've heard multiple places that actually Matt Campbell always coveted the Michigan job, so it's actually really bad luck for them the timing of all of this. But I don't know that there's a candidate like that left out there right now. Especially, I mean, again, ironically, kind of that group of former Big 8 schools, right, had that group of great coaches with Chris Kleiman, with Lance Leipold at Kansas, and obviously neither of those guys are coming off of very much good right now. And so, I think that, again, if you're Michigan and you're making a hire right now, like last time you made a late hire, you promoted internally and kept Sharon Moore. And just from a pure football perspective, I think that we can say that was not a great decision. I don't think it's left the program in all that good shape. Obviously not even getting into all the other stuff. And so I think that if you're Michigan, you have to decide, like, you have a Hall of Fame coach available to you, somebody who's won at the highest level, who's built a program at the highest level. Is that something that you feel like is good enough and important enough for you to invest in for the next couple of years? I think eventually they might come to think that that's something that makes a lot of sense.
Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, joining us. Over the weekend, we saw Iowa State's Rocco Beck announcing that he's going to go into the transfer portal. What do you make? We saw Josh Hoover, Sam Levitt, these constant musical chairs of quarterbacks. What do we make of it?
Yeah, I think that what's interesting, right, is last year a lot of these quarterbacks were pursued, and a lot of them said no. I think that when we look at the quarterback market in particular, and obviously in the Big 12, but also everywhere, I think that people overestimate how much of it is strictly about money, because these quarterbacks know if I'm in a good position and if I have success, I'm going to go to the NFL, and that's going to be way more valuable to me. Even though, of course, yes, of course, the short-term money is significant, but it's also significant at the schools where they're at. And so I think that the movement in these quarterbacks says a lot more about the instability of these programs right now than it does about whether programs are able to retain, per se. Because, like, I think that obviously Rocco Becht is obvious, right? Like, with him, him moving on, his head coach left in Matt Campbell. Sam Levitt is an interesting situation because I think that for him, like, this season didn't go the way that he wanted. He expected them to be able to build on the 2024 season, and now you can point to him being injured being a big part of the reason for it, but it was the case. And I think that Josh Hoover, too, I think that both sides at TCU and Tim were kind of like, we've probably done all we can do together. Maybe it's time to try something new. So, I don't necessarily view it as like a huge issue or a huge warning sign by any means, but, it's certainly a trend to watch.
Yeah, and you think all these guys will be okay as far as finding a place to land because they give you studies of guys who put their names in the transfer portal, and a high percentage don't end up places. Now these guys are high-profile guys. Would it be like Miami with Beck going from Georgia to Miami, and so essentially you're still playing at the high level? Do you see that, or do you see any of these guys potentially being in trouble finding a spot?
Yeah, I think with the particular guys who have moved, I don't think they're going to have trouble finding spots. We've heard a lot of connection between Brendan Sorsby and Texas Tech. We've heard, Sam Levitt be thrown around with some of the elite programs, the LSUs, the Miamis. It'll be interesting to see whether Rocco Beck follows his head coach to Penn State. That's something that makes a lot of sense. If he doesn't, that becomes, I think, a little bit of an interesting situation, but I do think he lands certainly at a power conference school. So I think that most of these quarterbacks are moving with the understanding that I'm going to get other power conference opportunities, and especially in a quarterback market that in general I don't think is all that good, frankly. I think that all of them will land in comparable or, in some cases better situations.
Okay, in 2.5 hours, the bowl game of the season, Utah State versus Washington State in Idaho. So I want you to take explicit, detailed notes because we're going to quiz you on about that game next week. You got it?
I love it. Let's do it.
Thanks for your time. Have a good holiday, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, that's Shehan Jeyarajah. You can read his stuff and all of the stuff at CBS Sports. They do a great job. I think is it CBS Sports Line? Is that their address, Yak? Do you know? I think it's something like that. But you could easily find that out. And he does great work, and we're appreciative of him joining us as he has throughout Mondays during the college football season. Coming up next, we're going to go live to Boise. Talk to our guy, Scotty G, who will be on the call at noon right here on the Sports Zone. Find out what's cooking on the blue turf in Boise, Idaho. Stay with us here right now as we will come back and talk about the bowl game with Utah State on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Okay, man, the biggest headline of the day, and our headlines as we get you up to date are brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 801-210-6800. Visit the website at TrajanWealth.com. It is live football coming up at high noon. And speaking of high noon, high above the blue turf in Boise, Idaho, is our man Scott Garrard, who is going to have the call. Scott Garrard, how the heck are you?
I am great, PK. It is a beautiful sunny day here in Boise. High should be in the 60s. I'm joking. It's a nasty, rainy, ugly day today. It's
it is?
Miserable. Oh, yeah, it's miserable. But, I mean, outside of being in Boise, which is always miserable, the weather's bad, too.
Now, what is your problem with Boise? I've been to Boise to cover basketball and football. I even gone up and saw a concert up there. Saw my guys, Kenny Chesney and Old Dominion, in an outdoor show, and spent some time there riding bikes in the city. So I've enjoyed their downtown. Why is it a guy from, what do they call it, Southern Idaho, hates Boise, Idaho?
Okay, it's all based on the university, and look, there's good people here. Make no mistake. It's a fine place. It's like a mini Portland. It's gotten weird here. I like that you've appreciated your inner tree hugger and riding bikes and keeping Boise green. Good for you. But sorry. All right. So when I grew up, everybody was University of Idaho fans because that was the dominant team in the state. And then I go home now and everybody's rocking this blue and purple or orange and being like, oh, yeah, I've been a lifelong Boise State. I'm like, no, you haven't. First off, you never even came close to getting a college degree. Second of all, you didn't even know Boise State existed until 2006 when what's-his-name scored the touchdown on the end around. And now you're claiming to be – like, you grew up a BYU fan. What are you doing? You grew up a University of Idaho fan. Don't give me this, oh, I've always been a Boise State fan. You had no idea this team even existed until – the mid-2000s, so knock it off. I think it's ridiculously stupid. A bunch of front runners.
By what's his name, do you mean Ian Johnson, who then petly dropped to a knee and proposed to Chrissy Papadix?
Oh, is that wow? Is that Petro's sister? I don't know. I didn't know that was her name.
Chrissy Papadix?
Yeah, no, that's
not
that's a
Petros Papadakis.
Oh, my bad. It's the Greeks. When in Rome, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's who it was, right? Ian Johnson.
I knew it was. Ian Johnson's right. The girlfriend, the cheerleader. I had no idea. So
Chrissy Papadix.
You just want to say that over and over, don't you?
That's her name. What do you want from me, man? I just want to, when you go to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, you want to be complete and thorough at all times.
Yep. Sounds like a name that would fit right in at Arizona State. Yeah.
Ian Johnson. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got this game today against Washington State. Now, Utah State getting to a bowl game is an accomplishment. There's no question about that for what Bronco took over. The program was a mess last year. We all know that. At the same time, man, they left a couple of wins out on the field. So that leaves me to think, they've achieved, they've overachieved, but then I can cite a couple of examples that they should have won, and I don't even know which one is worse, losing to Boise or losing to UNLV, because those are two games, I watched them both, that you had in the palm of your hand and you let it slip away. So what do you think needs to be done as far as the spin that we can put on this season today?
Well, it's a really good point, too, because you gone back in time to August and said, hey, you're going to go 6-6 and get back to a bowl game. Everybody would been like, all right, considering, as you mentioned, where the program was last year, you take that. But then 2 weeks ago, you're watching on this same field UNLV and Boise State play for a conference championship, and you realize you had both those teams dead to rights. You make 1 out of 3 field goals down the stretch, you beat UNLV on the road. If you just convert a first down, you beat Boise State at home, and you win those games, you're in a conference title game, and you're probably hosting that conference title game. So, it's a definitely woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I think you do need to go big picture. I'll go glass half full just because this is a team that had a long way to go. They were talent deficit most of the games they played this year. A good scheme by Bronco, bringing the culture. And look, I'll admit, like back in the day when Bronco got the job at BYU and a good chunk of those years at BYU, it was always easy to kind of make jokes about Bronco and his style and the culture he tried to build. But now I get older and I've got kids that are in college, and especially boys that are in college, and I look at Bronco and the culture he builds. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's where I would want to send my kid. I want my kid to learn how to be an adult, how to prioritize certain things. And so the older I get, the more I appreciate what Bronco's built. And these kids will run through a wall for him. And there's not a lot of opt-outs. There's only one significant opt-out, and that's Braden Pagan, who's going to sit this game out. He'll hop in the portal and probably make a good chunk of money as a wide receiver. But other than that, most of these guys, as of right now, are staying put, and a lot of that's due to Bronco and the culture and the fact that they like where this program's at and what they're building here.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned. I was the beat writer for the Watchdog when Bronco was there most of his time, certainly at the beginning, and guys really loved playing for him. Yeah. And they would do that, run through the wall, no doubt about it. And he treats you as an adult, and it's a business for him, and so he lays out the expectations, and if you meet them, you find yourself out on the field. If you don't, you won't, and maybe out of the program. So he's a no-nonsense guy, and I can appreciate it. I always thought he did a phenomenal job at BYU, because that program, as bad as Utah State's was, BYU's was even worse at the time. When he took over, and within 1 year, he got him a bowl win. Very similar to what he did at Utah State. I mean, the similarities are kind of almost like freaky. Now, then he follows it up with 4 straight double-digit win seasons. We'll see if the Aggies do that. If that's what I'm expecting. Yes, that would be incredible. Because I think he had like a 43, 44 wins, something like that, over the next 4 years with conference titles and all that stuff. And those are great times. and we'll see what happens in Logan. As far as this game this afternoon, as you've studied Washington State, what should USU fans be looking for?
You've got a Washington State offense that has not performed particularly well, but boy, they've got a defense that has done really, really well. And you look at their 3 games they played against top 25 teams. Well, actually 4. They lost to North Texas badly, but then Ole Miss in the college football playoff, they lost that game 24-21. They lost to Virginia 22-20, then lost to James Madison 24-20. So 3 games against 3 ranked opponents, all one-possession games. And and it's all because of their defense. Their defense gets off the field. They force sacks. They're good in the red zone. They get to the edge. They've got 2 really good edge rushers. One in particular, a Lehigh grad, in Isaac Terrell. His brother Carson Terrell was a tight end at Utah State, but he's now at Washington State from Lehigh High School, and he's been a tremendous asset for this Washington State program. And then also, look, you got a new head coach coming in. And he'll be here. He's not coaching the game, but he'll be here and has been around the team during the bowl practices. And, of course, he's evaluating everything he's seeing in terms of who he wants to keep around in this program. So there's a lot of resume building for some of these guys out here. So make no mistake, I think you're going to get a good effort from Washington State. You should get a good effort from Utah State. So we should have a good game today.
Speaking of defenses, man, what clicked for Utah State? Because, man, by the time the season got into the heart of it and in the back end of it, that defense made substantial improvement.
Well, I think there's a couple things. First off, guys just started to figure out the scheme. It took a minute for that Nick Howell defense, the Bronco Mendenhall defense that's somewhat complicated to kind of settle in with these guys. But then the biggest thing, and you can kind of point to it, is Ike Larson returning to the defensive backfield. Not only are you bringing a highly talented safety back into the mix, but it would allows Abinger, their best, essentially their best defensive back, to go back to where he normally plays a corner. So you essentially strengthen 2 positions by getting Ike Larson back out on the field, and that has certainly provided a big boost to this defense. And then they've just continued to improve the open field tackling, those little things that Bronco Mendenhall really stresses, assignment sound, all the adjectives, but it just kind of settled in and it just kind of clicked for these guys. And again, they're not great in terms of talent, but they've got 2 or 3 guys. John Miller's another guy to keep an eye on. He's been tremendous this year, but they're not a talent-driven defense. But the scheme settled when they settled in, then things really started to work in their favor.
Scotty G joining us live from apparently dreary Boise, Idaho. That's what he's telling me.
Yes.
It's raining.
It's dreary, nasty, it's ugly, and oh, by the way, it's also raining too.
I knew you were going down that road, yeah. Boise's a fine community. You would have been fortunate if you could have got a radio job in Boise. In fact, I kind of wish that you did.
Well, look, you know what? Instead of slinging Bar W beef, I'd be slinging truck driver school. So, whatever works.
I'm just kidding. I'm grateful that you got here and we've been able to work together all these years. Offensively, you lose the receiver. Now, he's an impact player, right?
Yes.
So how is that going to impact Bryson Barnes and the offense?
Big time. Honestly, they got 2 freshmen they like that have not seen a lot of time. They'll work them into the mix. Kahano Davis is another guy that will get a lot more opportunities. You'll look at Brady Boyd a little bit more, who's also had a pretty good year. He's got 644 yards. So that's a guy that certainly will be receive the benefit for Pagan being out. Brock Lane will not go in this game. He's injured. And then there's also some other issues that could be developing at tight end as well. So not only are you losing Braden Pagan, I think you're going to be a little thin at the tight end position. So, yeah, the passing attack is going to be sorely limited in terms of weapons that are available, but Miles Davis has just been awesome. Javen Jacobs, I anticipate you'll see those 2 guys get a little bit more involved in the screen game, the passing game, wheel routes. So I think they're going to be ready for it, but, yeah, mate, you're right. They're going to be down some weapons offensively.
Has there ever been a more prototypical Bronco Mendenhall guy, player, human being than Bryson Barnes?
And I said that, I remember sitting down with Bronco at Mountain West Media Day, and I said, it's almost like you guys were made for each other, because Bryson, when you hear him talk and you see him out on the field, that's how you would envision Bronco Mendenhall playing quarterback. And when he talks, it sounds like Bronco Mendenhall talking. Very serious, very goal driven, and these guys were made for each other. The season went on, and you could certainly tell. Look, Bryson Barnes will never have to pay for a meal ever again in Cache Valley because of the season he's put together. He has willed this team to win several games, including that Fresno State game.
That Fresno was awesome. Yeah, I was going to go right to the Fresno game.
It was unlike really anything we've seen from an individual player, where one guy said, "You know what? I'm just gonna win this game for us. Just get out of the way, get in front of your guy, and I'm gonna find a way to win this thing." And it has been awesome and fun to watch, and really good for him. If he had a competent offensive line, he would have been Mountain West Player of the Year, and Utah State would have won the Mountain West Conference. That's just how good he was and how well he played, despite not having a great offensive line and taking hit after hit after hit. I mean, he was sacked 39 times this year. League leading 39 times, and that doesn't include the amount of hits that he took after the pass. I mean, he just got beat up and just kept coming and coming and coming.
Do you know what his plans are after this?
You know what? He's going to make a run, and there has been a little bit of feedback in terms of the NFL, in terms of, this is a guy that we wouldn't mind having in camp. We wouldn't mind, maybe giving a shot at a practice squad opportunity to see if he can come in and help our room. Obviously, he's not going to be a starter in the NFL, but there might be some opportunities for him. If not, it wouldn't surprise me if you saw him roaming the sidelines here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if he might want to jump into that. I would think Bronco would find a place for him, and maybe even Morgan Scally or Satake. I know he didn't play at BYU, and he played at the other two programs, but whatever he's got, he gives you, that's for sure. Switching topics a little bit, you and Hans plugged into the college football scene here in Utah. What do you think about Kyle in Michigan?
I think hell to the victors, hell to Kyle Whittingham, man. Like, it makes too much sense. It feels a little bit like how Bronco came to Utah State, but on a much bigger scene. Like, if you're Michigan and you have an opportunity to try to right your image, and you try to get back on track and try to win right away, but also do it the right way and really clean up an ugly image that's been left over the last several years, who better than to hire Kyle Whittingham? I mean, honestly, it just makes too much sense. You tell the rest of the world, hey, we're serious about doing it the right way. We're serious about our image here, so we're going to bring in the Mormon guy from Utah who wins a lot of games, and watch out what we're going to – and frankly, if I'm Kyle, I'd jump at that opportunity. Now, he doesn't have a lot of years left in the tank, but if you go to Michigan for 2-3 years, turn that program around, get whoever you want to take that job, get them ready to go. If they want to put in a Michigan guy as your OC or DC that you can coach up and get ready to take over that job with a succession plan in place, I think it makes a ton of sense for both sides.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation there that, he never said he was retiring, and then when we talked to him last Thursday,
I'm in the portal.
He said, I'm in the transfer portal. If the phone rings, I'll answer it. I think my take on it was that they thought he was going to retire last year, and that Scally was going to take over, and then they had this poor season, so now he wanted to come back. And they said, well, if you're going to retire last year, why aren't you retiring this year? And that's when he said, well, I don't want to hang out longer, so I don't want to say he said screw you, but he basically said I'm out, but I'm not out completely. So That would be a phenomenal story. I would love to see him take it if he wants it, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And but the sad thing is, PK, like, I remember that year of 2005 when Bronco got the BYU job, Kyle got the Utah or the Utah job. I think at that time Ron McBride got the Weber State job. And it was a clean slate across the state. Utah State hired one of the 15 coaches they've had over the last 10 years.
Brent Guy?
Yeah, Brent Guy. Good pull. Yeah. And so But it's going to be weird to think that we're going to live in a world and cover the University of Utah without Kyle Whittingham being the head coach. I've been doing sports radio a long time here in Utah. You've been doing it longer, and it's just a staple of Kyle Whittingham in Utah. And if Kyle Whittingham had anything left in the tank, if he wanted to keep coaching, he shouldn't be at Michigan. He should be at Utah. I mean, if he had any breath of wanting to coach, which obviously he does, then there's no other place for him to be than the University of Utah. And I don't know how that was managed. Look, there's tons of rumors out there, but if Kyle Whittingham still wanted to be a head coach, then by all means, you make a way for him to be the head coach at the University of Utah, because I think it's a shame that whether he goes off as a college football playoff champion at Michigan, he still should be at the University of Utah, because that just makes too much sense. And that's what's the fact that he will end his career or possibly end his career at another school, I think is horrible.
Yeah, it could happen. And he announced that he was stepping down. He's a friend of mine, so I'm going to make an announcement right here that's going to shock the airwaves. I am announcing that if KSL still wants me, I will return next year in the same position that I have right now.
Yes. He's not riding off into the sunset, folks. He's not stepping down. He's ready to go.
Yeah, something about $6 million a year prevents me from riding off into the sunset.
You have that clause in your contract too, where you can retire but still get an extra $500K a year just to play golf with sponsors and those things, right?
That would be all sorts of fun, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you and Kevin White will be on the call here at noon, kickoff on a rainy, dreary day, and good luck to the Aggies. I hope they win and put them at 7-6 this season. So we'll see what happens there. So have a good time while you're in Boise.
You got it. Thanks.
All right. That is Scotty G, and the pregame show will start in about an hour and 10 minutes. Right, Yak, on our stations.
Yeah, 11 a.m.
And then the game is at noon.
Correct, yeah.
I'll be watching it, and away we go. All right, we'll wrap up the show next. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Instead of what people are saying, what people will be saying. And Yak, with some explosive BYU football news that he just told me in the break. Take it away, Yakster.
Yeah, so BYU football just announced, because last week we heard the news that the ACC had canceled the game that BYU and Cal had scheduled in 2026. That left a hole in BYU's lineup. Well, they have filled that one, and I think they've filled it with a pretty good team, and that would be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, PK. Notre Dame will make a trip to Provo next year in 2026, and then BYU will make a return trip to South Bend in 2027, a home-and-home series with the Fighting Irish.
Okay, so Notre Dame is coming to Provo next year?
Correct, yeah.
Wow. They will be playing in Provo, Utah in a non-conference game in September, is it? Do we know the date?
Well, the date for the Cal game was like September 12th or thereabouts, if I recall correctly. But with Notre Dame and them being independent, maybe you're working with the Big 12 to maybe move some games around. But in theory, that fills that hole on September 12th until told otherwise.
And then in 27, BYU will go back to Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana.
Correct, yes.
Have you ever been to South Bend, Indiana to cover a game?
I went in what was the game that Notre Dame went undefeated? Was that 2011? They went to the national championship. It was the Manti Te'o year and all that stuff. BYU played there, had a chance to win the game. I was at that game. So that's the only time I've been to South Bend.
Oh, yeah. I've been back several times for covering football, and I would encourage people to go in 2027. So that's way cool. That's big-time news for BYU. They will play Notre Dame host in Provo, Utah. That should be really cool. Hopefully that's not an 8:30 game.
You would hope not, but also let's watch ESPN work their magic.
And then they'll go as a return. Man, the last time they played them was obviously in Allegiant Stadium a few years back, and that place was packed with Notre Dame fans.
Yeah, and you remember that was supposed to be a home game for BYU and as part of that deal, but they got renegotiated where it was a Shamrock Series game played in Vegas.
Yeah. I'll be down in Vegas next week for the Utah game. I was thinking that'll be the 5th game I will have covered in Legion Stadium, 2 for Utah and 2 for BYU, and this will bump it up to 3 for BYU or Utah, I should say, in the Vegas Bowl, Kyle Whittingham's last game. It'll be interesting to see if they have something decided by then if he actually is the coach at Michigan.
Now, this is interesting, PK. So Ralph Russo from The Athletic just pointed this out. So with BYU and Notre Dame scheduling this home-and-home series, that means Notre Dame will not be playing USC in either one of those seasons because that was the last hole in the schedule if they were going to be able to get that long-standing rivalry with USC back on the book. So BYU taking that spot essentially.
Well, I know SC was whining about having to play that game and having to make another trip, yada, yada, and they didn't want to do that, and they're a bunch of babies. They're acting like all these things that going into the conference, well, wait a second, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. I mean, you should have thought of that ahead of time instead of breaking up the Pac-12 and then whine about it, all the road trips you got to make, blah, blah, blah. It didn't make any sense to me, but what the heck do I know? So there you go on that. All right.
One other detail real quick. This comes from Ross Dellinger. Irish finalizing this deal is going to be Notre Dame BYU October in Provo. So, yeah, that will be moving the Big 12 schedule around to allow BYU to play a non-conference game mid-Big 12 slate. So there you go.
Well, even cooler because then they'll have to play a conference game earlier than expected.
Correct, yeah.
So that'll be a more meaningful game. And then when we get into October, we'll be in the heart of the schedule as it is. So that just means that one more game that is important, more important, in September. Then they'll start, I guess, maybe in the second week. How that will play out. We'll see how that plays out when they release their schedule that comes out in the spring. All right, there you go, man. DJ and PK are off the rest of the week. Jake and Ben are next. Merry Christmas to you all, and to all, not a good night, but a good holiday season. We will be back on Monday, a week from today, to talk about all things and get you ready for Utah, see what's going on there next week. A lot of news to be happening, so stay here, keep it close. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.